things before I start. If you could start out again, uh, could you go on to the next slide, please? Yes. Before I start out, just wanted to tell you one thing that foresight is not about predicting the future. Foresight is more about imagining what are the possible futures that we can encounter. It is not a crystal ball that you gaze into and then say, Array, this is what is going to happen, or try to predict. It is not that. So foresight is about trying to understand what's happening today so that we can,
मी यांनी सांगितलेलं
so that we can,
बघेल आता काय आधी विचारपूस करून
we
घे.
are able to foresee what are the kind of challenges that we might face. Psychological research shows that people usually spend approximately 47, 48% of their waking hours just thinking and thinking about not what they're doing, but thinking like a wandering. Like you sit down and you're working on something and you are thinking about not the task that you have on hand, but either you're thinking about about anything else apart from what you have on your hand. And this is very interesting. What kind of thoughts engages us? What kind of where does our mind usually want to go? Even what research finds if you go to the next slide, Arun, please. Yes. Research has seen that around 13% of our thinking is usually about the past, 19% is about the future, and 68% is about the present. Now, that makes almost 30% of our thoughts are either directed forward or backward, which is a huge chunk. Why I say this is when you are thinking about the future or when you are thinking about the past, it usually shows how we approach the present. If I have a very, typically हम लोग सोचते हैं कि, good old days. We always talk about good old days, and we always talk about a worrying future. Most often, why is that? It is mostly because what remains with us, people who think about the past as a golden future, better than today, will typically tend to take a very gloomy picture, a very negative picture about the future. Those who think about the future, they tend to be more optimistic, who think more about the future than the past. So you have people who are daydreamers, who are thinking what might be possible, what can happen, and there are people who typically are brooding over what has already happened and they're enjoying the thoughts. So, so the way we think about the past and the future is how we approach the present. And this is very important when we are dealing with uncertainty. I say this again because today, with the corona all around and the kind of crisis that we are all facing, there are different pictures, there are different images that that capture our mind from this reality. Many of us are going through tough times, and therefore we are very disappointed. We are very negative or pessimistic. Some of us are still disappointed, still going through a lot of stress, but still believe that we might be, we will be through with this, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's all about being pessimistic and being optimistic about this whole situation. And this is very important when we bring this kind of a flavor, bring this kind of a thought to when we think about our business, when we think about our professions. Uh, uh, yes, Arun, could you move to the next? So this is the kind of relationship. So the relationship that we have with the future is different for different people. It could be that for me, if I have gone through a very tough phase, if I'm going through a very tough phase, I might take a very gloomy picture about the future, as I said. And if I am a kind of a positive person, I might take a still try and take what can be achieved, what can happen better in this situation. So psychologists say that the way we reach out to the future is depends upon how we reach out to the depends upon how what kind of people we are. So we have a short survey over here, a very short poll, I would say, and I request Sandeep ji to start that poll. So there are around 10 questions to it. If you could just quickly answer them, it's an either or kind of a question. If you could just quickly tell us how you feel about yourself in today's situation.
I hope everyone is able to see the poll on their screens.
Yes.
Is everyone able to see the poll?
Yes, Sudhir.
Yes, Sudhir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes,
Now
we
the
can.
feedbacks have started to come.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sudeep.
because I think it starts showing only after all questions are answered and submitted.
Probably.
Lovely. Thanks, guys. Please do participate. There's 10 questions in the poll. Lovely. Right. So I'll end the poll in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, still coming in, so I'll hold on. So, right. Response is still coming. Lovely. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks everyone for participating. I'll end the polling now. And these are the results. Right, Session?
Okay, great. So we have over here a wonderful mix of results. For instance, in some areas there are we see what I see in the results is there is a lot of uh, positivity to deal with. There is a people believe that there is a lot of good things that are still happening. Okay, and though there are some elements which bring us which are a little difficult for us. Like for instance, in the stress, people still believe that there is more stress to deal with. In the future, we will have more stress to deal with. For the first question, it was like people believe things are getting better. In the next year, 10 years, I see the world getting better. Almost 50% of the people, 85% of people believe this. And that is huge, huge thing for, in this scenario, this huge thing. In the next 10 years, the world will provide us more opportunities to succeed. 90% people believe it. In the coming future, wealth will be more equitably distributed. 56% people believe it. In the future, technology will bring us closer together. 76%. So see, when probably we can share the results in another platform. But what we see over there is a lot of optimism around. In spite of the crisis that we are all going through, there is a lot of optimism that I see around, and that's a very strong indicator that we still are thinking about the future in a very, very positive way. There are people, we have amongst us people who still have a very, very positive approach towards the future all about. And that is something that is from where I take off on this session. I'll just close the book here. Our future selves, it's very difficult to imagine how we will look like. Forget about imagining the future, forget about imagining how the world will look like. It's very difficult to imagine even how we as people will look like. And it is often the struggle. I'll show you two photographs. You all know these people. On the next slide, please. All of you know these two people. I'm sure about it. Okay. The one in black and white is Vinod Khanna, and the other one is Shashi Kapoor, veterans, Indian Bollywood veterans. But both no longer, I mean the both. And this is the same photograph in their old age, in the last few days. Do you think when in their younger days or when the earlier photographs were taken, they were able to imagine that this is how they will look like? I'm sure that they couldn't imagine this. At least many of us cannot imagine this. But this is a fact. This is how it happens. It what comes out, the factors that influence all these things are so various, so diverse that it is very difficult.
There's a request coming if you could be louder or hold the mic closer or something like that.
Okay. Just am I better audible now? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Yes, indeed, Saishnu. Yes. Much louder.
Okay. So, as I was coming across, this is how different futures typically are. From today to 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, things change so drastically that it's very difficult to connect the dots. And the art of foresight is able to connect these dots. If not all, at least some. That is what foresight is all about. Can we move to the next? So the challenge here is to separate what is predictable from what is fundamentally uncertain. Typically, when we talk about the future, we are always talking about what we know will happen, what for which we have enough information that will happen. And that is where foresight becomes different from forecasting. That is called a forecast. So today my business is doing X amount of revenue. 3 months down the line, I will be doing X plus 3. 3 years down the line, I will be doing X multiplied by 3. 15 years down the line, I will be doing something else. I mean, that prediction is coming from the data that we already have. It is quite predictable. Like the photograph that you see, the whole process is very predictable. But foresight doesn't talk about predictability. It talks about something which is fundamentally uncertain. And friends, mind you, we as human beings, we hate uncertainty. Most of us. We do not like uncertainty. And that is what I believe foresight tells us to do, that we have to embrace that uncertainty. How we do it is what we are going to see. Can we just move on to the next one? So whenever we are talking about predictability, these elements fall in the domain of forecasting. So it's very easy, to see today this week and my next week, or this month and my next month, they will be very similar. What I am doing this week will be very similar to what I'm doing next week. What I did last week is very similar to what I'm doing this week. But the moment you take it further out into the future, then things start becoming fuzzy. then then the boundaries starts becoming so fuzzy that it becomes very difficult. 2019, a typical Wednesday evening would have been, most of us would have been in office. Most of us would have been, commuting back to work at around this point of time, back from work around this time. And today we are at 2021, just 2 years, and most of us are locked in their homes. 2019, if somebody would have shown us this scenario, we would have laughed at it. Hand on heart, wouldn't we have laughed on it? Would have said, ये पागल हो गया है, ये पागल हो गया है, कुछ भी बोलता है, ये सठिया गया है बंदा. Would have done that. But today that's the reality because it has come from the dimension of an uncertainty. And this is what is important. So going to the next slide. Thinking effectively about the future this is what is important. That instead of seeing uncertainty as a problem, we start accepting it as a part of our life. And that means a huge mental leap, my dear friends. All of us, when we are running our businesses, we run it based on data. What happened yesterday? What happened last week? What happened week before last month, last year? All of us, the very balance sheet, the very concept of balance sheet is based on what has happened in the past. Foresight is not about that. Foresight is how do you take that past, or how do you bring in uncertainties into that information, and then how are you able to see the picture? You have to acknowledge that anything can be different. And when I say anything, I actually mean that it could be goddamn anything. Now, for instance, if somebody comes and tells you that India, Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh will all become one single country or one single unit like the European Union, how many of us will be ready to believe it? Almost none. We'll laugh it away. But if we are able to visualize a future even with this possibility, कि अगर ऐसा हुआ तो, if this thing really happens, then what do I stand for? Then what are my opportunities? Then what are my challenges? That is what Foresight is all about. And here I would like to give you an example and where this a little bit of a background to this study, which goes up to Royal Dutch Shell in the year in 1970s, early 1970s. There was something like which came as like the Arab oil crisis, where the Arabian countries decided to reduce the production so that the price of the oil goes up. And that created a huge challenge for all oil manufacturing companies. Royal Dutch Shell was the only organization in the oil manufacturing and refining space who anticipated this problem. Because other than business, they were also tracking political developments in the Middle East. They were also trying to understand various scenarios, like what happened with them in Venezuela. They went in and they talked about a huge development and how the oil production of Venezuela will, grow and become big. And after a few months, this Chavez fellow came in, the president came in, it went into a dictatorial rule. All private oil companies were nationalized and the executive boards were fired. They never factored that parameter in, and the whole story fell apart. The idea is therefore to admit every possibility into our vision. So if you could, Arun, if you could go to the next, please. This is another example, Polaroid. Polaroid was an organization 50 years they ruled the photograph world. I'm sure many of us, people who are in their, the senior people who are there, they must have had taken a Polaroid photograph at some point of time or the other, especially for passport or ID cards. A Polaroid photograph was, something like instant. And they ruled the market for 50 years, but eventually disappeared because they did not see the digital revolution coming. They could not predict, not that they could not predict, but they ignored it. They did not want to look at it. They said, this is not going to happen. That's just impossible. The moment you throw away a signal, the moment you throw away a possibility like this, it's very likely that disaster will strike the organization. So a possibility, a future possibility can be very weak, can seem very impossible today by today's standard. Doesn't mean it will remain that way 20 years down the line or 10 years down the line. And there are n number of such stories. Polaroid is just one. There is a story of Xerox. There is a story of Swiss Airlines. There is a story of Iridium, which was one of the best or one of the most advanced mobile satellite sat phone technology of its time, which just couldn't, they just couldn't make it. So no matter how illustrious, see, every organization lives for the future. Every business, चाहे वो छोटा shopkeeper हो, चाहे वो एक multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 company हो. Every organization is working towards a future. Every meeting, the discussion is what's going to happen next. अगला महीने का sales figure बताओ, अगला साल का projection दो, अगला marketing strategy क्या होगा. Everything is about the future. So to understand that future, it is important to bring in every possible or to imagine every possibility that can strike us. Or on the next one. This is a small thing that I pulled up from the net. You see, this is a Fortune 500 top 10 companies, comparison between 2020 with 2000. In the year 2000, these were the 10 companies which were in top 10. And in 2020, only 3 of them are there in that list. Now imagine this, friends. That top 10, 2000 top 10, Fortune 500, that means they are doing almost everything right. They have got the right market share, they have got the right product mix, they have got the right management policies, the right leadership, the right people. Almost everything is right. So in 2020, why is that same list not there? What is it that went wrong that 7 of them, not 1 or 2, 7 of them disappear from that list? ऐसा नहीं है कि ये लिस्ट बहुत डायनामिक है. अगर उतना डायनामिक होता तो शायद ये 3 कंपनी भी नहीं दिखती जो दिख रहे हैं. That means this is a mistake that happens at every level of human intelligence. ऐसा नहीं है that because I'm a very, I just run a very small business, that's why I'm not able to think, or that's why I do not know. No, it happens right at the level of those kind of intellectual, powerful, knowledgeable. अब जो कह लो उनके पास, they have got all the resources, almost all the information at their beck and call, and yet these things happen. Don't you think it's very, very intriguing that this happens? When everything is going right, what happens that things start falling apart? So the next slide, please. And this is a very interesting quote from which I came across, that when spring comes, snow melts first at the periphery. और ये फैक्ट है. जब कोई किताब का पन्ना फटता है तो आप देखना उसका धार से फटता है, एज से फटता है, बीच से नहीं फटता. जब कोई कपड़ा भी कोई फटता है तो जहां पे the edges में है, you will see that they start tearing over there. जहां पे सिलाई जहां पे वीक हो जाती है वहां पे फटने लगता है. You see, our body grows first at the edges. We become fat later on, but our nails grow faster than that. You see, you will, if you look around at nature, you will see that the place that is the most vulnerable is the edges, and that is what we call as the peripheries. What is happening in our periphery is something that we often, very often, we miss out because we are so focused in something that is happening right under our nose. Instead of seeing uncertainty as a problem, I am repeating this statement over here. पहले भी slide में आया है यहाँ पे, because I want to really highlight the importance of it, that uncertainty is something that we have to accept, admit, and adapt to in our lives. We do everything to eliminate uncertainty. हर एक्सेल शीट जो आपके लैपटॉप पे या कंप्यूटर पे है इज टू एलिमिनेट दैट अनसर्टेनिटी. अगर हर दिन आप दिन का खर्चा लिख रहे हो, इट इज टू एलिमिनेट दैट अनसर्टेनिटी. अगर आप अगले हफ्ते का टू डू लिस्ट बना रहे हो, इट इज टू एलिमिनेट दैट अनसर्टेनिटी. अगर आप एक लाइफ इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी कर रहे हो, इट इज टू एलिमिनेट दैट अनसर्टेनिटी. Almost every activity, if you're investing in something, it is again to eliminate that uncertainty. So how do we still accommodate uncertainty? Arun, the next one, please. Arun, yeah. So what is, just a moment, what is identify? How do you identify your periphery? Imagine that small dot. That small orange dot is you. आप खड़े हो. And then click around. And then you have a ring around. And that is the space where you, if it is for your immediate family members, very close relatives. You see, the line is a strong line because very few people are inside. In the next circle, you will see that's where your other relatives, family, friends, that's where they are. They are not inside, but they're not outside either. Click again. This is your professional circle, the orange circle. This is the outer ring, colleagues, professional contacts, group members, acquaintances. This is your professional circle. This is where people are. This is where most of the people. अगर आप 100 लोगों, if you have 100 people in your associated with you, almost 60 people will be in this periphery. Could you connect it? And this is the largest outside circle. References, contacts, also like LinkedIn, Facebook. Okay. And if you click again, people outside that is your periphery. People like आज मैं आपके periphery में खड़ा हूँ. Sahishnu Majumdar today stands on your periphery because I am still not in, and you are also still not in. It's a process that we have started of reaching out to each other. And as we move ahead, probably we will become references, and then we will become professional contacts, and probably we will become friends also, and we'll move in. But till then, I'm on the periphery. And imagine how many people you have standing on that periphery. How many things are happening on that periphery. It is essentially what's happening in the periphery that we often miss, and miss very hard. Could you? So click again, please. So in a business, my entire focus is taken away by my key customers because they are standing in that inside range. They are those close contacts. They are those people who are constantly in touch with him because they are feeding my business. I am feeding their business. Click again, and here you have the smaller customers. Customers who buy off and on, who transact off and on with you. And not just a customer, it could be a vendor also. they're not always there with you. They're not always, outside, or they're not always inside. And then if you click again, this is where your peripheral customers are. I am from the construction industry. I was with ACC for quite a long time, and we are into manufacturing. ACC is into manufacturing of cement as well as concrete. In fact, ACC is one of the pioneers of ready mix concrete in India. So, what is happening in the construction industry? In the construction industry, what I have seen is happening is the way construction is made is rapidly changing. I'm sure some of you may have heard about the concept of 3D printing. 3D printing is something that that object is printed into existence. So with artificial intelligence, with the kind of machine learning that we are going forward with, you would soon see that instead of a structure being built brick by brick, it is printed out in front of you. And this is something which has already happened. You can go onto the net and you can check one of the earliest bridge, a very small bridge that was 3D printed in the UK. Ultratech has also done some work in 3D printing in India. They've built some structures to 3D printing. Now, this is something that is happening in an area which is absolutely on the periphery. People who are involved with 3D printing are IT people. They are dealing with artificial intelligence, they're dealing with machine learning, they're dealing with robotics. They are not concrete manufacturing or cement manufacturing people. But the work that they are doing is impacting in some way, or will impact in some way, future construction business. And that is something that's happening in the periphery right now. As an organization, are we looking at it? As an organization, are we capturing it? Are we, whenever we take a decision, are we thinking from that lens also? Is how we are dealing with it, is how we actually invite or use foresight. Because if 3D printing does happen, it will change the entire landscape of construction in the society. आज एक बिल्डिंग, एक 10-storied बिल्डिंग बनाने में approximately 36 महीना लगता है, 36 months approximately. Okay, right from the foundation to handover, if everything is smooth. That 36 months can get reduced to 3 weeks if 3D printing comes in.
Wow, 3 weeks you said?
3 weeks, yes.
Wow.
That's the speed. And the point is that it will have nothing to do with the way we construct structures today. It has got nothing to do with it. It will still use concrete, it will still use cement, but it will not build the way we are building or we are doing the work today. Essentially, you will find construction industries trying to improvise. This is called incremental improvisations or incremental innovations in the way of the our structure is built. The scaffolding badal dega, the kind of scaffolding, the kind of equipment that they get in, they will change. But 3D printing might change everything over there. Arun, could we move on to the next slide? I have a small video for all of you. And what I want you to observe very carefully, I don't start till I say start, okay? What I want you to observe very carefully, the instruction, how many times the white people in the white are passing the ball within themselves. This is what I want you to capture very,
so guys, the assignment is जो सफेद कपड़े पहने हैं, white clothes, how many times are they passing the ball to each other I think keep a count of it and you need to post it in the chat box. So just keep a count of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Arun, when I say pause, please pause the video immediately. Okay? Okay. Start the video now.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Pause it. Pause it.
The answer is 13. This is an awareness test.
How many of you got the answer as 13?
I saw something else.
You saw something else? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
I'll
good,
hold on
good,
to
good.
it because I saw it.
Yeah.
I'll hold on to it.
Okay. How many of you got the answer 13?
I saw 15.
Yes, I got 12.
Yes, I got
When I got 12.
13 exactly.
yeah, I saw 13.
12, 12.
I got 11.
11. I got 9.
You got 9. Great. How many of you concur with Arun that they saw something else?
I saw it. I've seen.
I saw it.
Yeah, it was Sudeep who saw something else. Yeah.
Even me, Arun, Anuradha here. Hi,
Okay.
Saishnu.
Hi, Anuradha. I just wanted to speak out to you, but I just held on. Hi, how are you?
So
We'll take it later.
Yeah. Yeah. How many did you get?
So did I get? Huh?
Any-
Do you want me to reveal what was the thing that was there in the middle?
No. I just
Okay.
wanted to know from people, what did they see? Anybody who saw anything else?
I saw.
Okay.
Anybody
play
else?
Play the rest of the video, please.
Yeah.
Even I saw something else outside. Yeah,
Team.
some guy was moving around.
There
But
was a
did you
guy
see
in a
the
chimpanzee dress.
moonwalking bear?
Any of you saw this? Moonwalking bear?
Guys, did you see the moonwalking bear? I think so. Let me play that again. Just watch closely.
Okay. So, how many of you did not notice anything? Just a quick raise of hand or whatever. You did not see anything else.
Myself.
Okay.
I did not see anything.
I did
Okay.
not.
I did not see also.
Okay. This is nothing to be embarrassed about, because this is what happens with everybody. Even when I saw the video first, I also did not notice it. The reason is that when you are very focused onto something, that when you are doing something in a very, very, focused way, we tend to miss out on things that are happening in our environment. And this is very, very critical for foresight. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is another video, similar, another video, but let's play it. Yeah, could you play the video, please?
This is the shell game. I'm going to hide this Hershey's Kiss under this cup, and the object is for you to pay attention and follow along and try to guess which cup the Hershey's Kiss is under at the end.
Could Deposit.
Try to guess if it's in the left cup, the middle cup, or the right cup.
Center.
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 Almost.
Middle one.
Right. So
Right,
here is
right,
an
right.
okay. So here is an environment which has only 3 variables, and there are only 3 cups moving, so there are only 3 variables. So obviously it will be much more easier. So can you see the move ahead with the video? See where it is.
Let's check the left cup. The middle cup. If you guess the middle cup,
You're right.
you got it right. So now we're gonna make it a little more complicated. I've added an extra pair of hands.
So here we are now introducing a little more variables. So watch carefully. Yeah, please play the video.
And I've added additional colors here. But that's only to distract you from the pink cups. The pink cups will always have, one of the pink cups will always have the Hershey Kiss underneath. So let's get started. This is the shell game. I'm going, pink cups will always have the Hershey Kiss underneath. So let's get started. So can you guess where the Hershey Kiss is?
Right side.
Right.
Left.
Okay.
Right side. Middle.
Okay.
Left.
None of them have it.
Let's play the video. Please, Arun.
Yeah, 1 sec.
Left.
How many of you saw?
I did.
I saw the duck.
Yes. I also saw that.
How many of you saw the 5th hand?
I'm sorry. Again, my apologies.
Suddenly there was a 5th hand also coming in the screen.
That's the 5th hand.
Exactly. So the blue cups got changed actually.
How many of you noticed that happening?
I noticed it, that the cups color were changing.
I noticed that.
Sudeep has become an expert, I think, after attending so many sessions.
No, nothing to do with that. Attending so many sessions, it's just that presence of mind need to be there on the screen.
Oh my God, very poor presence of mind.
No, nothing. I also missed it out. Don't worry.
Okay. So most of us usually miss it out. Okay. Because the more complex variables are, the more difficult it becomes to track what's happening there. And that is where uncertainty catches us. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Typically, if you have to foresee into the future, if you have to see what's going to happen or imagine what possibilities can happen, you have to look back into the past. The thumb rule is, if you want to see 10 years ahead, you have to go 20 years behind. That's the thumb rule. So you have to look for those trends. You have to look for what you're actually looking for. Say, for instance, you are seeing how a certain technology has evolved, okay? Or say, and you want to track it. You will actually have to see how it has happened over the past 20 years, how the technology has evolved, and from there on, take that leap into the next 10 years and look at it. And this is very important because typically what you will see. I'm sorry. Am I clear? Am I audible now? I just got a message that it was. Am I audible? Am I loud enough?
I am able to hear you, Session. Yeah.
Okay. Great. In that, this is one of the thumb rule. Can you quickly move to the next one, please? We have typically what is emerging in the periphery. What is actually happening in our periphery is something that will actually start impacting us in the future. So it's very important that we are able to observe the periphery, capture the signals from there, or identify, even if not capture, identify the signals and try to track them. Many signals will be dead calls. Many signals will be like a wild goose. It will be like a wild goose chase, or it will be like it won't really be worth the effort. But the important thing is you cannot ignore anything. Do not ignore anything. See, that's what is the difference between the human eye and the organization. In an organization, when you are working for a business or in an organization, your complete focus is into the work that you have on hand. But the human eye typically keeps on scanning the periphery. So we have this natural ability to observe what's happening in the periphery. But because we can constantly keep ourselves focused, we are told, be focused. You always have to focus on your work. Being focused on our work, it is a learned behavior. We have typically what is emerging in the periphery. What is actually happening in our periphery is something that will actually start impacting us in the future. So it's very important that we are able to observe the periphery, capture the signals from there, or identify, even if not capture, identify the signals and try to track them. Many signals will be dead calls. Many signals will be like a wild goose. It will be like a wild goose chase, or it will be like it won't really be worth the effort. But the important thing is you cannot ignore anything. Do not ignore anything. See, that's what is the difference between the human eye and the organization. In an organization, when you are working for a business or in an organization, your complete focus is into the work that you have on hand. But the human eye typically keeps on scanning the periphery. So we have this natural ability to observe what's happening in the periphery. But because we can constantly keep ourselves focused, we are told, be focused. You always have to focus on your work. Being focused on our work, it is a learned behavior. And the way we learn it and the way it gets ingrained, we gradually, our ability to observe what's happening in the periphery becomes blunted. And this is where we often go wrong. This is where often that important signals miss our attention. Could we move on to the next phase? The last video clip, but just observe this video clip. There are no questions to ask over here, just observe it. This was Corona in 2020. That's Corona in 2019. And gradually it's becoming 2020. This was Corona in 2020. That's Corona in 2019. And gradually it's becoming 2020. This is us in 2019 and 2020 rather. It's happening elsewhere. It's happening in Europe, not in India. Now, some cases, some stray cases are coming up. Some movement.
Who is he?
And we are asking this question, who is he? What is it? Suddenly we go into a flurry of action.
Tavas!
And this is 2021 Corona. Stop the video, please. Isn't this what has happened? Isn't this what we are actually going through?
What we ignored, which was at a long distance right now, is killing us.
Yes. Because we responded so late. Because we were collecting information, we were collecting data, we were becoming a little bit of confident with so many things. But by the time we responded, it's too late. And this is very important. Today, the crisis that we are facing in this country is actually a result of the kind of attitude that we, the people, have had towards this disease. The way we have ignored certain things. Nonetheless, we're not getting into that. But this is why I put this video over here. This is how a signal emerges. This is how it starts becoming larger. And by the time we are ready to respond, it has done what it wanted to do. Then move on to the next slide, please. What is this?
Caterpillar.
Any answers? Any answers? Caterpillar, I heard. Caterpillar, right? Move on to the next slide. When it's a caterpillar, there is nothing in it which tells us that tomorrow it becomes a butterfly. But it eventually becomes a butterfly. And that is what weak signals are all about. We ignore them. We just brush them aside. ये हो नहीं सकता. Imagine when China में जब ये Wuhan में हो रहा था, I remember so many managers saying, बस ये सब हुआ है. ये सब पब्लिक को डराने का तरीका है. ये सब फालतू चीजें हैं. We go about our work. And today, the same thing is taking away lives after lives. Can we move on to the next, please? Okay, this is an example, which is a very fantastic example of Xerox, photocopier business. Xerox, incidentally, is the inventor of photocopy. And as we all know, that today we often say Xerox rather than photocopy. इसका एक Xerox करके ले आइए या इसका एक Xerox चाहिए. Xerox has entered our language, so you can understand how powerful this brand was. 1969, 1968, and 1970 also, this was one of the leading companies or the leading brands.
So Saishnu, I mean, I've even heard people say, "Kaunsa company ka Xerox hai?" And they say Canon ka Xerox hai.
Yes. That has happened quite later. That has happened quite later. We are talking from a perspective of the last 10, 15 years. Here we are talking on the past 60s. Xerox should have dominated that market. There can be a Canon Xerox, there can be so many other, but Xerox should have been the number one, isn't it? But it didn't happen that way. Because when Xerox was at the top of the market, and photocopying was a centralized kind of a business which they were encouraging and which they were protecting by every means. Canon entered that business with small printers, low cost printers. जहाँ पे Xerox का 914 cost around $80,000, $120,000. Canon introduced a small printer of $600, $800, which can give you a print of only what you want. Eventually, Xerox lost that market. Something that they had created, they lost it. And this is just one example. There are many, as I told you earlier, there are many such things. So the point is not that Xerox lost it. The point is that the more intelligent we are, the more adept we also are at rationalizing important signals. Because we apply our logic, we apply our analytical mind, and we make the whole thing so familiar. We make the whole thing so mundane that it appears to us that we are completely in control of it and it cannot impact us. So whenever you are struck with a idea from a bolt from the blue kind of an idea, जब भी ऐसा कोई bizarre idea दिमाग में आता है, it's important to try to rationalize away, but try to understand it. That's very important in foresight. When you're building foresight, you go to the next slide, please. In every organization, you will have, हर company में छोटा हो बड़ा हो, you will have those what we call those idiots. कुछ भी बोलता रहता है, कुछ भी मतलब he'll talk about bizarre things कि ऐसा हो सकता है, वैसा होता है. He lives in a dreamy world. अगर ये हुआ तो, अगर वो हुआ तो. We had this one manager who used to keep on talking about, things like from the fantasy world. And his boss would always tell him to come back to reality. या तो हमेशा सपनों की दुनिया में मत घूम, क्या हो सकता है नहीं, क्या हो रहा है उस पे बात कर. Don't give me stories, give me numbers. Is this a common thing that we hear? कहानियां मत सुनाओ, जो हो रहा है वो बताओ. It shows how disturbed we get when anything that doesn't fit into our frame of understanding, जो हमारे mental model के साथ बैठता नहीं है, how frustrated and how upset we get about it. That we want to come away from it. And this is where this mavericks, people who think like this, outliers who think differently, are very important to be around us. So if you know somebody who जो आपको ऐसा bizarre ideas बताता रहता है या फिर एकदम out of मतलब जिसका कोई reality के साथ कोई touch ही नहीं हो, don't brush him away or her away. It is important that you understand what the person is trying to say, because most likely the person is talking about a signal because the person is talking from the periphery, talking about a signal which he or she notices but we don't notice. Could we go on to the next slide? We have a small we are asking, what do you see? There is a series of numbers in front of you. What is common to these numbers? What is common in these numbers?
4 and 3-digit number.
4.
4 and 3-digit number also.
They're all 3-digit numbers. They have 4 in common, right? All agree with us? Okay. Go on to the next slide, please. What do these numbers have in common?
Numbers are in international system. 3 digits.
How important it is for us, to have a response.
They have nothing in common actually. One is a 2-digit number and others are 3-digit numbers.
Yeah.
Total is odd.
Yeah.
Total numeric total is odd.
Sir,
All are 3-digit numbers.
you know the number 6 is missing.
All are odd numbers.
The number 6 is missing in all the numbers. You know what? Go on to the next slide. What we don't see, we can't imagine. जो दिखता नहीं है वो दिमाग में हिट नहीं करता. Uncertainty is all about this. What is it that जो दिख नहीं रहा? ये जो today this corona thing is going on and we are all getting vaccinated. Okay, now, next slide we will talk about it a little bit. But what is it that we are not able to see in this entire process? This is very important. You know, for instance, when we get off a flight, we worry more about collecting our luggage. We do not stop to notice that we did not crash. Isn't it? When you cross the road, you are on the other side and you go about your daily work. You don't stop for a moment and think, gosh, I was not banged by a vehicle. Because something that doesn't exist within your environment is very difficult to notice it. This is the missing elephant. The elephant in the room. हम सब लोग बात करते हैं ना मीटिंग में. There is an elephant in the room. This is that elephant. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is a real case which I want to again share with you. Suppose you are one of those fighter pilots, or you are one of the aircraft engineers, and the country is at war, and your aeroplanes are going out, and there are planes that are coming back, and there are all bullet holes on that aeroplane. And you are asked to modify those planes so that those bullet holes are not there. Okay. So you're asked to to modify those planes so that they are more protected. So where in this figure, where would you put up this additional armor?
Anyone
Below
wants
the
to
engine?
answer?
It's at the engine, I think, because these planes have come back, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Perfect. Yes, that's absolutely the answer. And the point is, this was a real life case for the World War II planes that were returning back to the to the Allied Air Force, and they were trying to find out where should they put that additional armor when they approached one of these scientists, and he just asked the questions that where are those planes? Why don't I see aeroplanes which have bullet holes near the engine or in the cockpit? For the simple reason they did not return. That means they are the more visible, more vulnerable areas. The fact is, the kind of questions we raise when we are faced with a situation determines what kind of foresight, or determines how we will foresee or imagine the future. Can we go to the next, please? So here are a few weak signals that are happening in our present environment. Okay. So as I told you, there's a long-term impact on the vaccination drive. What happens to life and health insurance if the average lifespan of individual increases to 120 years? The vaccination drive that's going on, it's increasing our immunity level, correct? And imagine that we become so immune to some very important diseases that the average life of individual increases to 120 years. What does that mean for health insurance and life insurance companies? Look at another scenario. There are many young people who are losing their lives in this epidemic. We had a case, right? Reminded of this case again and again that Arun told us about. Now, In such a case, in that scenario, who's going to the say the work responsibility? Most likely the senior people, most likely his parents, or most likely the person who is already in the retirement may have to come back to work because he's lost the son who was supposed to run the family, or probably the lady or the wife will have to come up.
Retired doctors came back in the pandemic.
Exactly, which means if it indicates that the average working life of an individual, if it is going up to 80 years, what does it mean for our workforce demographics? How will the workforce change? What does that mean for fresh people who are going into the working world? Will we see a post-pandemic redistribution of population, where people will say, "भाई मेरे को बड़े शहरों में रहना नहीं है, I want to go back to," because of the work from home है. Anybody can work from anywhere. So it doesn't matter मैं बॉम्बे में रहता हूँ, दिल्ली में रहता हूँ, या मेरा गांव में रहता हूँ. What does that mean for those small economies? What does it mean? Suppose the public health policies now shift towards prevention rather than cure. Right now, our public health policies are more focused, more oriented towards cure. But now imagine that they shift towards prevention. What does it mean for the pharma industry? How will that change? So like my children, like they can attend international schools, Delhi, Bangalore, while we stay at some village of mine. What does that mean for the local schools? These things are those weak signals that are moving around presently in our environment. It is existing in our environment. Some of them we can see, some of them we can't. But the more perceptive of us, the people who are thinking about it, have the ability to really scan the environment. They are able to identify these kind of opportunities which are coming. You're still on the periphery, but that's a future opportunity. Can we move to the next slide, please? So these are the 5 sources of uncertainty. Missing important information. We are uncertain because important information is missing. We are uncertain because we are not able to trust the information that we have. We are uncertain because it is inconsistent with what other information we have. Lot of irrelevant information, noise, which we have. So we don't know which is true, which is false, especially today when there is an era of fake news, there is an era of deep fakes that are coming up. How do you differentiate whether the news is to be trusted or not to be trusted? If there's too much of this kind of news, then it means something else for us. We may have all the information, we may trust everything of it, but we still are uncertain if you're not able to interpret it, if you're not able to put them together. These are the 5 things that we should think of, or we should try to do when we are focusing, when we're thinking about uncertainty. What is it that we are not able to see? What is it that we are not able to trust? What is it that is inconsistent? Right? And last is most important, how do I put everything together? Go to the next slide, please. So, like Colin Powell, one of these U.S. secretaries of state, I suppose, defense secretary, I don't remember what he was exactly, but he said that if he is less than 40% confident, then he needs to gather more information. But if he is more than 70% confident, then he believes that he has too much of information. Today we suffer from both. Too little information and too much of information. Take any subject and you will find that either you have too much of information, it's more likely to have too much of information, or you have very scanty information. We'll move to the next, please. Next slide, please. So these are some of the methods by which you should be scanning. We can scan our environments. First of all, you should commit to scanning. Scanning means observing. Scanning means observing without judging. अच्छा है, बुरा है, हो सकता है, नहीं हो सकता है. Don't. If it is catching my attention, let me pick it up. It is if somebody else is bringing it to my attention, let me record it. Don't pass a judgment. This is possible or not possible. This can happen, not happen, or it's trivial or important. Don't pass a judgment. Just record it. Multiple methods means you can scan the internet. Today, mostly we go to the internet for getting information, but it is very important that we also go to other sources, and especially human sources. If you know an expert, call that person now. If you know a professional, call that person now. It is an iterative process. Scanning your environment, scanning the periphery is something that we should do every day if possible. Spend 10, 15 minutes out there.
But Saishnu, we also judge a lot nowadays. If you look at social media, Twitter, people are very judgmental.
Exactly, and that is where we need to stop doing that. We should hold ourselves. If I say that 2018 May, there was a comet that passed through our solar system. And there is a Harvard University astronomer who says that it was not a comet, it's an alien spacecraft, which was doing a Reiki. How many of us will believe it? How many of us will believe that by the turn of this century, 2000s में हम लोग हैं, so by the time 21 comes in, you will know some space alien civilization may have contacted us. If somebody tells this to us, we really think, hey, this person has lost his mind. But if you scan the environment, you will see a lot of information around there. Some, of course, is noise. Some नहीं बहुत सारा is noise. But there are some information which catches attention or which you cannot ignore. So we should stop judging these things. कि ये हो सकता है, नहीं हो सकता है. Because आज से अगर 50 साल पहले आपने किसी को कह दिया होता कि मेरे पास एक छोटा सा ऐसा डिवाइस होगा जिसमें मैं गाना भी सुन सकता हूँ, लोगों से बात भी कर सकता हूँ, पिक्चर भी देख सकता हूँ, खेल भी सकता हूँ, people would have thrown you out of the send you to an asylum यार. किसी asylum में भेज देता तुम्हें. But आज it's a reality. So look for convergence. See, a single technology often doesn't do the wonders. It combines with multiple other things and then combines. I was giving you the example of 3D printing. Now, 3D printing is happening in the area of AI, machine learning, robotics. But when it comes and combines with the construction technology, with the concrete technology, then things start changing. Then you see the results. Air travel, we all know that Wilbur and Oliver Wright, they built the first aeroplane and air travel started. But actually commercial air travel didn't start because of that. Commercial air travel started because Boeing or some one manufacturing company, they did a small change in the tail of the, they attach this ailerons जो wing पे होता है. They put that in, तब जाके air travel could be commercialized the way we see it today. That's a small thing, but it had to happen. A different technology had to come in so that it changed. So think through implications. What is it that we are missing? And most importantly, my dear friends, create a culture of making mistakes. We avoid making mistakes because as human beings, we have this craze, this hard desire to be right. मैंने कहा था, मैंने बोला था, देखा, I am right. ये जो right होने की जो हमको एक, we have this, it's so difficult to say, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong here. It's so difficult to say that, isn't it? And the more powerful we are, the bigger we are, it is more difficult for us to say, admit, oh no, I'm sorry, I made a wrong calculation. But because we have been brought up with a mindset that you have to be right. You are the leader, you are the boss, you have to be right. You cannot be wrong. And that is a mindset that needs to change because we have to create a culture of making mistakes. So we go on to the next slide. So this is how do we typically make mistakes? So suppose on the x-axis we measure potential benefits of making mistakes. On the y-axis we see the cost of making cost of a mistake. So we have low, high, low, high. Then high cost, low benefit, tragic mistakes. Okay. High cost, high benefit, serious mistakes. Say for instance, low cost, low mistakes, low benefit, trivial, and the fourth quadrant is, this is where we are. Low cost but high benefit. This is what are called brilliant mistakes. आपके पास वो post-it है, you have all seen a post-it, right? Now post-it पे जो gum होता है, post-it was invented by 3M. तो post-it पे जो glue होता है, remember the story of that glue. It was a failed product. The product had failed because they were preparing a glue which would be super strong, and they were making a glue. They were designing a formulation for the aircraft industry. Aircraft manufacturers के लिए इतना super strong glue जो एक बार लग जाए तो कभी ना छूटे kind of. उसका ठीक उल्टा बन गया. It's a very weak glue. Post-it आप जितनी बार चाहो लगाओ खोलो, it works. They shelved the product. Till somebody said, till a situation occurred, till somebody noticed this can also be a useful thing. So that error जो lab में हुआ था, almost for 15 years the product was boxed up and thrown away in the lab. For 15 years almost, it was considered as a lab error. But it became a discovery and one of the highest, one of the most popular products globally, Post-it. Losing a job in this pandemic, so many of us, including me, I've lost a job. I lost my job from ACC, but it set me off on a new career, on a new discovery path. When I was in ACC, I was all set to retire out of it. आराम से भाई, हर महीने का 30 तारीख को सैलरी आ जाती है, आराम से सुबह 9 बजे ऑफिस पहुंचना है, 6 बजे निकलना है. Everything is provided by the company, every care taken, medical से लेके everything taken care of. I didn't want to leave it. But when I exited, it threw before me a new challenge, an uncertainty. Can we move on to the next slide, please? And this is one very important thing. What are we assuming? Every business works on some assumptions. My children used to go for a karate classes, and this karate sir was very good. He is very good. Last 20 years से वो classes चला रहे हैं, schools में karate सिखाते हैं. Come pandemic, उसका business बंद हो गया. The reason is he went on the assumption that कुछ भी हो जाए, children will want to learn karate. Schools will continue to invite children. Schools will continue to function that they are functioning, and karate will be an important part of the curriculum because it's about self-defense, which is very important. These were the 2 or 3 basic assumptions of his business. He never challenged those assumptions. All our businesses are based on some assumptions. These assumptions are based on today's reality, or probably a little, say, a foreseeable future reality. We have to keep on evaluating it. And I would also try to tell you that we have also to notice our tolerance to ambiguity. How tolerant we are. There is a scale, there is a psychometric scale by which you can measure how tolerant you are to ambiguity. We can, if required, I can run that assessment for those who are interested. But this tells you when something becomes uncontrolled, unknown, whether we are comfortable with it or whether we feel very uncomfortable with it. And most important is the last one. Look for disconfirming evidence. Typically, हम लोग क्या करते हैं? Suppose I have a hypothesis, I have an idea, मैं 4 आदमी से पूछता हूँ और उन्हीं से पूछूंगा जिसे मुझे पता है जो मेरा आइडिया के साथ अग्री करेगा। आई विल नेवर गो एंड आस्क अ पर्सन जो मेरा आइडिया के साथ कभी अग्री करेगा नहीं। आई ऑलवेज लुक फॉर कंफर्मिंग एविडेंस। But it is, if you want your idea to succeed in uncertainty, look for disconfirming evidence. Look for things which says, hey, this idea is not going to work. Look for that. If you find disconfirming evidence, you let that idea go. But if you do not find, and keep continuing looking for it, if you do not find, remember that your idea is very robust. But it's human nature that we always go for confirming evidence. Can we go on to the next slide, please? This is a very small tool that we talk about. So what we do is we rate these assumptions onto scales. I'm sorry, the scales are not written. It's misread. Oh no, they are there. How certain are we that it is correct? If you could click once again, please. Yeah. On the y-axis, you have how important is that idea, how important is it, that assumption, sorry, and how certain are we it is correct. So on a scale of 7, 0 to 7, on this matrix, you start plotting your business assumptions. So here in a hypothetical case, there are probably this business has 10 assumptions. And on these, each of these assumptions are plotted on this matrix, which says, say for instance, A6. A6, it's like, it is not a very important assumption, but they are very certain that it is correct. Contrary to that, A7 is an assumption which is very important, but the certainty, the confidence in that assumption is not very certain, not very good. To give you an example, for instance, say schools today, they are based on the assumption that children will keep coming to the classroom to take education. ये basic assumption है. That assumption is like, it's one of very important. It's on a scale of 7 पे आएगा. And how certain are we that it is correct? Probably 2019 में अगर ये पूछते तो शायद वो 7 पे होता. But today, probably it is at somewhere around 3 or 4. Students will keep coming to, because if this pandemic continues for say another 2 years or so, then things can change in a very big way. So that assumption, where will that assumption be on this matrix? It will be very high up. Importance very high, and certainty that it is correct is very low. So we can focus on those assumptions where the importance is very high, but the certainty is very low. Take those assumptions of your business. आपके बिजनेस जो फंडामेंटल अज्यूम करके चल रहा है उसको इस मैट्रिक्स में प्लॉट कीजिए, और जिसका आपको इंपॉर्टेंस बहुत ज्यादा लगता है और जिसका आपको ठीक से अंदाजा नहीं है ये सही होगा या गलत, ऐसे assumptions को एक तरफ करके take it forward. Go to the next slide. And then you ask yourself these 5 questions. What is the benefit? Suppose I am going to do an experiment, or suppose I'm going to change this assumption. I'm going to do something different, or this idea को मैं change करूँगा. What is the potential benefit of that? Is this a decision that I'll have to continuously do? Is it very difficult problem to solve? Is it an experience-based assumption? मतलब हमारे पास enough experience नहीं है, and the business conditions surrounding this issue, how changed it is. On a scale of 1 to 7, if you rate it, scale 1 is not true, scale 7 is very true. इसमें आप अगर उसे plot करते हैं and then total up करते हैं, you will find, just as in this hypothetical case, that assumption, the 10th assumption for this business was very high, very important. So that's an area where they can afford to do mistakes, but they still would want to go ahead and do some tweaking around. So ranking of your assumptions, because this is something which is directly related to the uncertainties. This is something that is directly related to what's happening in the periphery. The more you know the periphery, the more the certainty of these assumptions will change. जैसा जैसा आपको पेरिफेरी के बारे में आपको ज्ञान होता जाएगा, मतलब आपको अटेंशन होता जाएगा, you will know whether these assumptions का value, how much you can trust these assumptions, that will also keep changing. If you go on to the next slide, please. So here we are, almost towards the end of this, the last slide, I would say. Trust your intuition, okay? Because many times what analysis can't tell us, our intuition tells us. So trust it. Don't discard it just because it is an intuition, because you do not have data to support it. Trust it. Use your analysis to understand what that intuition or support your intuition. If analysis doesn't support that intuition, that's okay, but at least trust that intuition, don't discard it. The fourth point, put more energy in understanding the situation than in what to do. And this is very important. Most of the time, the moment we strike with an idea, we think about abhi karna kya hai iska. The next logical thing that we go, what do we do about it? And we get lost. Rather than spending time in what to do, spend more time trying to understand why does this idea arise? What are the various sources which support or which conflict with this idea? Spend more time over there. Don't confuse desire with intuition. I might have a desire to become a millionaire. That doesn't mean that I have an intuition that I'll become a millionaire. Accept uncertainty, adopt convergence, and throughout the process, remember, you are visualizing a possibility. You are not predicting the future. आप कोई बाबा ज्योतिष, you are not Odyssey, or you are not
Oracle.
Oracle was the word, not an Odyssey. Oracle, not an oracle that you are forecasting or foreseeing what's going to happen. You are only visualizing कि अगर ये हुआ तो, and you will have to create that many number of stories with each of these variables, with each of these elements that you see in your peripheral world. You have to combine a few things together and create a story. You have to combine again, take another set of things, create a story. So build multiple scenarios and then see in each of those scenarios what is constant, what remains constant. Mera business ka, what are the assumptions of my business that are valid throughout all those scenarios. And that is what will help you foresee or make your business more robust. The next slide, please, the last slide. So I'm done with, I just gave you a brief idea about what Thinking Unthinkable is. I enjoyed doing it. I'm not sure how much all of you enjoyed it, but this is something which is very close to my heart. I run a 4-day program on this, Thinking Unthinkable. It's a 4-day program. I started it when I was a L&D head for ACC, when they approached me for when they wanted me to do a program for the senior level managers. This is what I came up with. And we conduct these programs in small groups because it needs a lot of interaction. Okay, the facilitation is done in very small groups, not more than 10 people. And there are a lot of things that we exchange. There are a lot of giveaways, etc. So for all participants over here, if you are interested in, we can give you this tolerance to ambiguity test. We can give you some interesting reading material also. Okay, so which can help you understand how what we are talking about in a little more detail. So that is about it. So we are on 3learningstudio.com. That's my website address, and Arun will have all the other details as well. So thank you so much for being so participative and having a rapt attention. So this is really lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Saishnu. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to take a note of the website and the mail ID. And Saishnu has been so kind to kind of give the tolerance to ambiguity test free. So you can reach out to him, using his email and also some free material there. So kindly do take a note of that. Once again, it's www.3elearningstudio.com. I repeat, 3elearningstudio.com. And his mail is sm, that's